In 2001, I was camping with my family at a state park in southern Alabama, and it was right around midnight and we were all asleep in our tents when we heard something screaming outside of the campsite. The sound was so loud that it woke up both my parents, who were sleeping in their RV about 50 feet away from us. My dad gets out, opens the door, and goes outside to see what's going on. He looks around but didn't see anything unusual. Now this screaming continued on for another 5 or so minutes and then abruptly stopped. Everybody's looking around trying to find the source of this mysterious noise. My dad eventually goes back to bed, but my mom decided it was safer to stay up and keep an eye out for whatever could have been making that noise. She sat in her camping chair next to the RV and kept her flashlight pointed towards the woods. She seemed very spooked, as we all were, and somehow my father remained completely unfazed. After about 25 minutes, she saw something moving. She thought it might be a deer, so she stood up to get a better look. This is when she believes she saw something that should not exist. What she saw was an animal, around 8 feet tall, with long reddish-brown hair all over its body, and a face like a dog with large jagged teeth and pointed ears. This creature was walking on 2 legs, but featured a very muscular body and arms ending in long claws. My mother began screaming incoherently, and this thing looked at her for a few seconds, grimaced, and turned around and disappeared. She ran into the tent where I was sleeping, but not at the moment. I was only 12 at the time, but I remember this vividly because it was so terrifying. My mom and father got their guns and went outside to see if they can find anything, but everything was quiet. The next morning, we told one of the park rangers about what had happened. He laughed in our face and said that it must have been a wild dog or possibly a hog or a very large black bear. He did not even entertain the notion of what my mom had saw. It was definitely something paranormal, I feel. Even though I didn't see it, my mom did, and she stands by firmly what she saw. I later found out that this same state park, which I'm not going to name, had another sighting just a few years prior. Man and his wife were camping in and around the same area when they too heard a strange noise coming from the woods. The man, who thought it was somebody trying to break into his RV, decided to investigate with his weapon and found a 7-foot-tall creature with red glimmering hair that seemed to illuminate, with pointed ears and large teeth. It tried to reach out and grab him, pulling him away, but he escaped, making it back to his RV while staying shut. He made it back to his RV just in time, with this thing stalking his RV all night. He never did go camping back at that state park. How do I know this? Because this man and his wife were close family friends of ours. In my opinion, there is definitely something supernatural hiding in the woods of that national park. Joshua Tree National Park is beautiful. It is vast, also located in Southern California. It has 2 very distinct ecosystems, and in a way connects the Colorado Desert and the Mojave Desert. I'll save you the novella. Me and a friend of mine decided to hike one of the trails that goes through one of the mountains. It was a nice trail, lots of small trees and bushes. After about an hour or so of hiking, we came across this clearing. There were several large stones around us, and it appeared like a great place for a rest. We sat down and began to eat some lunch, and as we're eating, my friend noticed something strange about one of the large trees in front of us. The branches were going up from the trunk. There were these strange little markings etched into the wood, and there was just something strange about it. We immediately felt this strange energy now encompassing us. It felt very unwelcoming, like we shouldn't be there. It's hard to describe it, but it was almost identical to an electric buzzing feeling. My friend and I looked at each other, and we both knew something was very wrong. We started to pack up our things and head back down the trail, and as soon as we started moving, the strange energy almost seemed to fully disappear. as if it came and went with no problems. I felt like there was something maybe guarding this area, and once we moved away from it, everything felt normal again. We didn't say anything about what had happened for a while after that, but we did eventually talk about it, and we realized there are several strange things about this experience. The strange feeling only encompassed us, and the small clearing, while after that, the strange energy seemed to dissipate. Is it possible that we unintentionally came across a burial place? Maybe one that is guarded by an evil spirit or a powerful native spirit. One theory is that the spirit of a Wendigo is actually guarding that spot. Of course, I understand that this is a very wild theory and could probably be explained, but I don't know. How do you have two people who experience something like this and have no way to account for what it was? When we first got to that clearing and started eating our lunch, everything was fine, and then it's just like out of nowhere, this strange feeling slapped both my friend and I right in the face. I mean, it was clear as day when we experienced it. Even so much so that we looked at each other, realizing that we were both experiencing something we could not explain. It's okay if you want to say that I might be quick to jump to conclusions, but I don't know. What we experienced wasn't something that I feel could easily be explained, and we've been out to that part of the park many times. Maybe not that exact trail, but we've never had something like that happen. Just before I turned 30, I went camping with a few friends at a campground in San Juan National Park. It was the weekend, so it wasn't too crowded, fortunately. We set up our tents and began cooking dinner around 6 p.m. Now, I decided to go for a walk after we ate. For me personally, I feel it really helps the digestion process once I get my legs moving. I did not have my dog with me because he was getting older and couldn't hike that far anymore. I mention this because I usually don't go anywhere without my beloved dog. But this time, well, it was different. I feel like he would have protected me more had I brought him along. So, anyway, I took my flashlight and headed out on the trail that leads to Lake Como. It's a bit of a walk where we were camping, but it's still very beautiful. Now, there are campsites all around and even some cabins I know of if you can rent and you want more privacy. As I began walking more and more, the moon was becoming fuller, and so there was plenty of light to see by. I walked down by the shore area and sat on one of the picnic tables for a while, then decided to head back. As I stood up, I heard something behind me making a growling sound. Instantly, I thought about a bear, but it sounded too big to be a bear. I turned around and saw what I describe as a creature maybe 40 feet away. It had strange hair all over its body, but kind of looked like it had mange. It appeared maybe a dark, smoky gray or a charcoal color. I just see these orange orbs that glowed in the moonlight, kind of like a cats do when they are reflecting light. What I was looking at kind of appeared to be bobbing up and down, almost as if to try to pace itself to run after me. I was pretty much frozen in place for the time being, not exactly sure how to move forward or if I should run for my life or slowly back away from the picnic table. I quickly saw it duck down, and I knew in that moment I had to move back now. I don't know if this was a bear or a cougar or what I was dealing with here. Even though what I saw looked like neither of those things, I knew that for my safety I had to make it back to camp. So I quickly got up and I ran as fast as I could back to the campsite. I somehow made it in record time. I think overall it took me about 14 minutes. Somehow. I get back and I'm panting, trying to catch my breath, and my friends are looking at me like I'm a weirdo, wondering, why did you run all the way back here? What's going on? I couldn't exactly tell them what I saw, so I explained, oh, well, I swore I saw a large black bear moving around, and so it could have been a mama with cubs. They kind of just laughed it off, and we began to sit around the fire. Now, it's right about this time to where things started to get a little crazier. My buddies and I decided to bust out some beer and try to relax as best we can. Now, it probably wasn't more than an hour later at most when we all hear this blood-curdling scream that sounded akin to a woman being murdered or tortured in the woods. It was pretty chilling to say the least, and it lasted about 20 seconds. It made all of us stare back at the woods, then stare at each other like something happened. None of us really knew what to do or say, so we brushed it off. And shortly after that, within moments, we all see these large, bright orange orbs almost floating around in the sky. It kind of reminded me of those air shows you go to with the fighter jets and how they would do these choreographed movements in the sky. That's what it personally reminded me of. And we all watched it thinking, wow, what is that? As they would shoot across the sky and come back together again and rotate in a circle and move out and make different formations before eventually disappearing, and then they'd reappear somewhere else and rinse and repeat. Now this went on for probably 20 or so minutes, I'd guess, and then just vanished, as if the lights just went out. We were pretty creeped out by the whole thing and really had no idea what to make of it. Now remember, at this point, I hadn't told anybody about my experience over at the lake and seeing whatever creature or animal I did. We just tried to turn in early, but I don't think any of us got good sleep that night. The next morning, we get up and we pack up immediately, and I think we all had the same idea, that bailing now was probably a pretty good idea. Now, before we actually got out of there, we had a park ranger stop by our camp and start talking to one of the buddies. And judging by a lot of the things I've heard on your channel, I guess I'm surprised she told us this, but she just told us to be very careful if we plan on staying a second night, and that somebody had reported a large unknown predator around the area that she guessed was probably a large bear or a cougar. Anyway, I know my story isn't that exciting, but after that we left, and we haven't been back since. To this day, I still don't know what it was I saw and what the screaming and those lights had anything to do with one another. I have a feeling, though, that they are all interconnected. What are your thoughts? I've been a truck driver for over 10 years now, and I've seen some crazy things while out on the road. I've had my trailer fall off the back of my truck, I've had deer jump out in front of me at night, and I've even had a guy try to actually run me off the road with his car because he was so mad that I wouldn't let him pass. He ended up flipping his car, but nothing has ever scared me to this level like this experience did. I was driving a truck in the summer of 2016. I had just left my home state and was heading to Texas. It was about 2:40 in the morning, so it was obviously dark out. I was on an old highway that ran parallel to the interstate. The road is very straight with really no curves or hills for miles in sight. Now, there are some trees on both sides of the roads, but there is also small clearings about every couple miles or two where you can pretty distinctly see the sky above you. As I approached one of these clearings on my side, something caught movement in my eye in the sky above. At first, I assumed it was a small plane because of how it appeared in contrast to the night sky, but I watched it as it got closer, and I realized it wasn't moving like a plane at all. It was gliding through the air at a very steady pace, almost levitating. It seemed to be getting bigger as it got closer to me as well, and that's when I noticed how huge this thing was. It looked like a giant bat with wings that were spread wide open. Its body even resembled a human form, but from what I could tell, its head, at least the silhouette of it, looked more animal than anything else. I could tell that it had large ears and a long snout. Its eyes were almost glowing this white, ominous glow, and as it got closer to my truck, the spill of the light of the headlight kind of shone more detail, and this is when I saw it in a terrifying revelation. We, or it, made eye contact with me for only a few seconds before this thing flew off behind me where my trailer was. I'd estimate it being about 8 feet tall, with a wingspan of at least 15 feet. It had bat-like wings that were spread wide open, and it glided through the air like a bird would. It was effortless. Its body resembled a human, but its head reminded me more of a lion's, actually, if I were to guess, or a lion mixed with a large bat. I've never really told anybody this story. I don't want to be thought of as crazy or something, but after seeing some of your videos about people reporting these things, especially in Illinois and around Chicago, I figured, what the heck, I might as well tell my own personal story. If you do find out what this thing was, because I'm pretty sure it wasn't a giant bat, let me know, because I'd like to sleep better at night. After seeing this thing, I felt sick to my stomach and couldn't stop shaking for hours after. It was like the worst case of jitters I've ever had. I don't know or can't say if this thing had any intentions to harm me or not, but I get the distinct feeling it wanted me to know it was there. It wanted to reveal itself to me, and it did. It scared me, and still scares me when I think about it. After I had this sighting, I began to get real sick, and within 6 to 12 hours, I came down with real bad flu symptoms. Fevers, chills, body aches, pains, nausea, diarrhea, and the worst migraine of my life. I was sick for about 7 days after this until I started to feel better again. I've never been so sick in my life, and I've had the flu on countless occasions. Now, this has only happened one time since. It's like this thing gave me some kind of sickness. I don't know. I don't know what I saw that night, but I know I will never forget it. This thing is real and it needs to be looked into further.